Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. Hopefully, everybody is doing awesome. As always, Fredo, Dave, and I are broadcasting from all points around the New Orleans metro area. Say hi, Dave and Fredo.
Hi, David
Hi.
Fredo.
Thank you. There you go. And tonight is going to be a little bit different episode. You know, we did the Empire Strikes Back little watch party where we just watched Empire Strikes Back and talk about it. So we decided we're going to do the same thing with the Last Jedi tonight. You know,
Dun, dun, dun.
we've been talking about the Last Jedi in many episodes, and you know, I don't think I've watched Last Jedi since The Rise of Skywalker, interestingly enough. So I wonder how that will influence things. But I have watched Knives Out a couple times, so you know that'll
Same.
be interesting to see if we notice anything. But otherwise, we're gonna. I mean, there's tons of news that happened this week. We're gonna skip it. We're gonna talk about it next week. So if you want to watch along, you know, we're all queued up to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then you can join us. We're just going to be talking about what we see or letting our thoughts kind of wander, but it'll all be about The Last Jedi. So in 3, 2, 1, play. And we'll see if I can break my internet. All right. So interesting factoid about the main theme. I think I can't remember which documentary I saw this on, but every director gets to decide or has influence on the mixing of the main theme. I think it was Rian Johnson who said it, that like Empire is a little darker, so they mixed it a little bit different so that it's matches the tone of the film. But anyway,
I think it was really noticeable with The Force Awakens for some reason.
it was very bright. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very bright and clear, and yeah. So I noticed that for the first time with that movie that they were a little different.
So does that mean like they highlight which instruments they want to bring up to the foreground? You know, which way it wants to be played?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they record. I mean, they record the main theme. It's written, you know, and then it's just you go in on the mixing board, and it's just trebles, basses, and mids, and you know, just adjust it that way. So
if you want to drop like a fat beat, you know, if you want to call in the Neptunes or Timbaland or some other super producer and do a remix, that's when you can do it.
Sure. Yeah.
I think this crawl was maybe the most on the nose crawl that I'd seen in a Star Wars movie in terms of what I expected, where I thought we were going to be and what they were going to do with it.
But interesting though, because this movie starts, I mean, it's hours or at most a couple of days, right? Since the Battle of Starkiller Base. So it's almost like they're going like, okay, we're gonna catch you up with everything that happened, but you could, you know, splice the end of Force Awakens and the start of Last Jedi, and it flows right on through.
Yeah, pretty much like Rogue One into A New Hope, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I do like how this movie it got to the point. It's not like Empire where it's like we see, you know, Luke just riding on a tauntaun, you know, and that kind of the probe droid just kind of meanders down to Hoth. This they get right into it, and of course that's the way it had to be, you know, because it wasn't like, yeah, I mean they came after the Resistance right after Starkiller, so.
Because a lot of these First Order officers like Hux that we've seen, we saw last running away from the destruction of Starkiller Base. You know, they are clearly coming in, you know, with a mood, with an attitude about what the Resistance did to their base. So it's the kind of thing where you go like, okay, they've had some time to cool, you know, to kind of recompose themselves, but they're still very much hot under the collar.
All right. So, question. I'm not saying do we have any problem with the humor, because again, if we think about Empire, you know, there's got to be humor without gags and stuff like that. What do we think specifically about the General Hugs Poe Dameron thing?
Yeah,
I
it didn't
imagine.
bother me either. And I know some people it really rubbed them the wrong way, but it worked just fine for me because it felt like it was in character for Poe.
Mhm. I mean, the way we've seen Poe kind of presented is that he's not stoic. You know, the very first time he comes face to face with Kylo Ren, his words are, "Who talks first? You talk first. I talk first." It's very
So,
snappy, quippy, kind of dialogue. So this
so you
makes
know
sense.
what just came to me after I've done my Avengers homework, and actually I'm rewatching some of them again. This smacks of Tony Stark.
In a way,
I
in a
mean,
way.
it's the kind of jokes that Tony Stark would make, in a very serious situation, and that's what it feels out of place in a Star Wars movie. That kind of just flat out gag, it's talk about his mother, um, type of thing. So
You, you know what it is? It feels very much like something Leia would say. It feels because Leia, when she first present her is regal, but there's that New York attitude underneath. The I'll confront you that, but so in some ways Poe has that same vibe as Leia.
I think that it's just going to be one of those things that a lot of people are going to like, and a lot of people are just going to not like
Mhm.
ultimately. Um, but I love this new character, Kennedy.
yes,
Mhm.
and they and they kill him off in like 5 minutes from now. I mean, he is actually the Star Wars. The sequel trilogy has this thing about here's a great baddie, and then we're gonna kill him off.
Well, they do a good job. I mean, they're lighting him in deep red, and as opposed to the bridge on the Star Destroyer that Hux is on. Kennedy is very much in red and shadow. You're like, okay, what the heck? They did. I guess they chose a different set of lights for that ship for the dreadnought. But I
Well,
also do.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I do like that they're putting us right in the middle of an action moment. I always prefer Star Wars when it starts off right with action.
I agree with that, and I think it was the right call because of where they left the previous movie. Like everybody's like, "Whoa, what's going to happen with Ray and Luke?"
Mhm.
And like, well, we're not going to give you that right away. We're just not. We're gonna show you something else. And really, this is about the only other thing they could show us. Um, but I agree with you that I like the tone. I like that it's actiony. Um, the stakes are high. It's
Cause
it's it's good.
uh, yeah, because I mean, besides A New Hope and Revenge of the Sith, this is the only Star Wars movie that starts right away in an action beat. Most of them take their time. They're slowly beginning, to lay out the situation. Uh, and here we get we're starting to get the fighting between him and Leia,
By the
which I think
way,
is interesting.
so on a very superficial note here, but I was reading some things about the Last Jedi, and I hadn't thought
Mm-hmm.
about this. Space jewelry.
Mm-hmm.
We've never, if you think about it, try to go through all the other Star Wars movies. Have you ever seen a ring or a necklace or stuff like that? And I mean, but it was Carrie Fisher who went to Ryan Johnson and said, "We need space jewelry."
Well, they incorporated it as a plot element.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun.
But
It
that's
wasn't a throwaway.
By the way, I
well,
like these bombers. I
mhm.
just like the makeup of them. I like the whole idea of it, and I don't care that it's breaking laws of physics. But it's
I mean, again, we're talking about a Star Wars movie, and people want to, we want to bring reason, logic, and our understanding of the physical universe to it. They're going in faster than light speed ships, you know, across the galaxy. That breaks everything we know about modern physics. But
I
yet we
don't
take it on faith
understand why they move so dang slow.
because the plot needs them to. That's why.
Yeah.
Yep. Build the
But
tension.
now, what was interesting is whatever happened to the Y wings? Because clearly, I mean, that was the bomber of choice for the rebellion. What
Right.
happened to the Y wings that they have been
Well, those were
replaced by?
those were way old models, and from the Clone Wars. So it was, I mean, certainly outdated. They didn't show up in Empire Jedi,
They seemed more effective than these slow-moving bombers, though.
right? Well, sorry, but ships that move slow in space is kind of a theme in this movie. That won't be the first or last time that it won't be the last time that I mentioned that in this movie. It's one of my big criticisms. It starts off so quick like this, and then it just kind of lumbers.
You know what's funny is like this sequence with the bombers is kind of what you're going to get later on in the movie. It's going to slow down a little bit.
But it's also, I mean, it's a good way of putting, like we're saying, putting action at the beginning, because things are going to slow down later on. So we're going to hit you with the dessert first, and then we're going to give you the meat and potatoes.
Now the sequence with Paige, I think it's really well done.
Yeah, it creates like tension.
I could not, like, watching it unfold in the theater, you thinking there's just no way she's going to catch that thing. The way that it's shot.
Well, the other thing that's kind of cool about it is that here's a person that we have no idea who she is. It's, for all intents and purposes, a nobody making a significant contribution to the battle, and I like that.
Well, and it's, I mean, her importance in and of itself is to the sequence, but it also, character-wise, it's key for Rose later on, because we come to find out who she was, and the idea of what this means to her later on down the road when she goes on her own mission.
Right. It works on its own merits, but it's also such an important scene for Rose's character later on.
I really like Rian Johnson's cinematography. It's such a well-made movie, and it's different from any Star Wars movie. Just the framing of things, the way the camera moves,
the angles of stuff, like the way that Paige's final shot, juxtaposed with the explosion behind her, that kind of thing.
It's just a pretty movie.
You'd mentioned earlier having rewatched Knives Us Out, and I recently rewatched it as well, and that's true in that film as well. Everything is just gorgeous.
Like you get the sets from inside the house, and depending on whose room it is, it can be warm and inviting, or it can be cold, or it can be distant. So you get to know about the characters from the settings within the same house, and like even I forget what's Anna de Armas' character's name. When you're in her apartment with her mom and her sister.
Yeah, Marla.
Mara, yeah.
Sorry, real quick. This scene here where Hux slams down on the ground, the stunt guy busted his nose doing that shot. I think that was in the director's commentary. Rian Johnson mentioned, he said he winces every time he sees it, because when the guy hits the floor, you see his face just bounce right off, and it broke his nose. So this right here with Finn, that was supposed to be the opening shot of the movie, and it freaked Rian Johnson out. He said he didn't like the beginning of it because he didn't know what the heck was going on. It just wasn't telling the story right. So,
well, again, you expect that people coming to see Last Jedi saw The Force Awakens, so they kind of know where you left Finn. But as an opening, as the first thing you see out of the movie, I don't know that it would have worked as well.
Was it Finn naked bag? What was the?
Yeah, leaking bag. Finn
That's
naked
right.
leaking bag, I think.
Yeah, Finn naked leaking bag.
and this is the transition that you want. Where's Ray? And then you're going to see where's Ray.
Yeah.
It works so much better having that sequence with Finn there at the end.
I still can't believe that I was on a boat right outside of Skellig Michael. It wasn't that bright and sunshiny, I'll tell you that.
But was it that green?
It was that green, yes.
Were you that green?
Yes, I was at that point, yeah. Because we got there and it was fine. The boat ride out there, and I'd taken Dramamine. By the way, I want to talk about this for a second. I have no problem with Luke tossing the lightsaber. I have a problem with how he tossed the lightsaber. This is such a vaudevillian, flick. I think it would have been much more effective if he just chucked it down just right down to the ground, right at his feet. Not over the back of his shoulder. Oh, that's just me. But anyway, no, we were on the boat. It was all good, and then he killed the engines, and we started rocking, and that was fine too. But I made the mistake of looking down at my camera and then looking back up at Skellig Michael, and then it was all bets are off. Oh my goodness! So,
but I was gonna say, it must have been an amazing experience, though.
Oh, it was very cool, and puffins everywhere. So that's why you got porgs. But no, this made total sense to me. Luke not wanting anything to do with Rey. I mean, it was kind of a curveball, but it made total sense. But of course, again, when I saw this in the theater, I was on drugs. So from having surgery, this is my favorite shot of the porgs playing with the lightsaber.
I will say, I think it's understandable why at the beginning, the first time you see it, everybody's reaction is like, "What the heck?" when he chucks the lightsaber over his shoulder, because your expectations of who Luke is are immediately subverted. At the same time, though, you have to give the movie time to explain why he did such a thing. You can't just simply go, "Well, he wouldn't have done that." It's like, well, hold on, let him explain why he would do that.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Rey goes and gets Chewbacca.
Yeah, I like Chewbacca's entrance.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I never even thought about watch the movie when Luke says, "Where's Han?" That was your first clue that he has closed himself off to the Force. He would have known when Han Solo died, because A, it's one of his best friends, and B, it was his nephew that did it. He would have known. So the fact that
Absolutely.
he did close himself off, hindsight being 2020, yeah,
it makes perfect sense.
But also, I mean, this is something that I was thinking of about it, right before or yesterday, as I was thinking about this movie again. It's like, we don't see, I mean, and I'll bring it up right now as we're seeing Kylo Ren and Snoke speak. We don't see or hear of anything that Kylo has learned from Snoke, apart from whatever he picked up while he was Luke's pupil. The ability to wield the lightsaber. Well, Ben Solo had that. The ability to, it's really only using the dark side of the Force that he's taught, and that up to a point. So the idea of how much more training and how much more understanding of the Force has happened in the 30 years since Return of the Jedi, it doesn't seem like there's been much growth from either side.
So do you think Luke knew that Snoke was Palpatine's puppet, basically?
Well, that's an interesting question, because on the one hand, we have Leia, who recognizes that it was Snoke. I mean, she says to Han, "It was Snoke who turned our son," so she knows who she's blaming.
Yeah, so well, let's be honest. In Episode 7, that was not a thing yet. That hadn't been created. That was like them being twins.
Right. But it's also the idea of, would Luke even have sensed Palpatine? Would he have known about him? Because there's no indication that he does.
Well, until Episode 9, where they write that in, it's like, oh yeah, you're a Palpatine. I know that. And he's around. I know that too. And here's what you need to do. And so like, they did all of those things. But it's so funny to me. Like Snoke reminds me of the mystery box
Mhm.
problem, and this is like one of the many issues that Ryan Johnson had to deal with in this movie, which was all the mystery boxes that had been left for him, and you're like it put it in a position of having to explain so much. It's like, okay, well, let's pay all these things off.
Yeah,
And
there was no exposition done on Snoke at all, except that he was the
and and,
leader. Yeah,
and so like ultimately his solution of like he's not interesting, he's not interesting, he's 2D, let's kill him off,
Mhm.
and see what that does for Kylo. um I ultimately thought that was a really interesting decision to make. And I mean, we talk about deconstructing. There's a lot that we're probably going to get into during the course of this runtime, but um, ultimately, what happens to Snoke, I'm totally cool with.
Same here. And I thought, for one, I mean, the seed of it's planted in this very first scene where where Snow confronts Kylo Ren about how killing his father didn't do what he expected him to do. And the weird thing is, Snoke doesn't take that on himself as, "Oh, I failed. I gave you the wrong advice." It's, you failed because you're not strong enough. So it's a rift's already being created because Kylo's already done the darkest thing he could possibly do to give himself wholly to the dark side, and it hasn't worked the way that they thought it would.
well, and then
So,
if you take away his influences, whether it's Luke for the good or Snoke for the bad, that makes him even more dangerous. You
mhm.
know, somebody who's, I mean, he doesn't have control of his powers, and his teachers are now, so yeah, he's just it makes him more dangerous. So it made sense that they get rid of Snoke here eventually.
which
Um,
is which goes back to what I was asking regarding
by the
how
way,
much.
spoiler alert to everybody.
Yeah. Oh, the line. What, you think I'm gonna go walk out there with a laser sword, stare down the First Order? Come on now.
That's such a good line.
It is a perfect line. But no, but the idea of how much teaching did Snoke actually give Kylo Ren? Because
Well,
it goes to the idea of, it's, Snoke is just, when when Han confronts Ben about, he's just using you for your power. He's right.
he's an abuser.
Very much so.
And you see that, and you don't really get to see that in a lot of these other movies where you see that apprentice master relationship on the dark side of things. Um, you see some of that with Palpatine and Vader, but here you're flat out seeing someone suppressing someone else and abusing them. And
Just
uh,
taking what they can do and turning it for their own gain.
and it adds so much more to the scene later when Ben ultimately kills him. And again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's like, why? How, you have at that moment belief and hope that he could turn.
Mm-hmm.
You are thrilled and excited by what you're seeing because you're like, yes, he was justified in making that kill, but he ultimately doesn't make the right decision in that moment. Um,
He's making the right decision, but for the wrong reason. It's not to free himself of what Snoke poured into him, but it's just to get rid of Snoke because he doesn't need him, and in a way, that's
right,
right.
right.
I love the whole sequence with old man Luke.
by, by the way, here where they're filming, the tree and stuff like. Well, I guess that was on Iceland. They did that, but they filmed some stuff just off of the coast of Ireland, just off the coast of Dingle. They couldn't get back on Skellig Michael for a length of time, so they rebuilt that whole Luke's village type thing right off of Dingle. And my one of my coworkers could could see it, so that's kind of cool. I love the
Nice.
sequence in the tree. Um,
I would have loved more.
Yeah.
Like they hinted at this stuff in the trailers, and I'm thinking, oh, this could be really cool. Learning more about what's in the sacred texts and where the Jedi come from and all that stuff. But it's funny because it becomes Ryan's like little mystery box in a way, and he shelves it by the end of the movie.
Well, this is just one of the best interactions between Mark Hamill and Daisy Ridley in the whole movie. You know, this sequence right here. I just think it's really well acted, um, really well directed. Um,
Hamill crushes it here.
Oh yeah, oh no, and in many ways, I think this is probably his best performance since Empire. I mean, in terms of understanding of the character, understanding where the character is, what he's trying to do. Again, there's been a lot of said and spoken about and written regarding what the real Luke have done this, but he does a good job of showing you that this Luke would have done this.
I'm sorry, I love the line said, "No one's from nowhere. Where are you
Right?
from? Jakku.
Jakku.
All right, that's pretty much nowhere." So again, it was. I think Ryan Johnson. He's following that Irvin Kershner. Like I said, humor without gags, and that. I mean, that's kind of a gag, but it's not the. We got a call for Hugs's mother. It's. I don't know. It seemed to fit. It seemed to fit more.
Well, again, it fits the character. Luke is not going to make fun of her. He's agreeing with her with that line, but at the same time, he's also disarming the situation because there's a barrier that's been established between him and Rey from the onset. Because the first thing she does is show him the lightsaber. First thing he does is chuck it away. So now they're having to come to terms with why he's doing what he's doing.
I'll never forget that this scene right here of him leaving the cave, they released that trailer on Good Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a fun little nugget.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, that to me is one of the best trailers for any movie ever. The full trailer for this movie. It just, the score is immaculate. If you haven't watched it in a while, go back and watch it. It's so good.
And first time we've seen the effects of coming out of hyperspace, see the bottle wobbling.
Mm-hmm.
Every time anybody's come out of hyperspace, it's just like, okay, we're going slower now. I like how they have added some of these, this is what would happen,
And I love the fact that first thing Leia's like, okay, I know what I got to do. I don't want to do it. I know what I got to do. Okay, get out there. And she's still very much the general. She's still very much the leader of the rebellion, now the resistance. She makes the hard choices, which is one of the central elements of her character. Han will run away. Luke will run away. People will come and go. She's the one who's going to stick to the fight no matter what.
Yeah, if there's one bad thing about The Last Jedi being right after The Force Awakens, that Finn in the sequel trilogy does not have a good arc.
No,
he has a plateau and a spike. He doesn't. We're not able to follow him on a well thought out journey. It's just because his story in this movie is basically the same story as in The Force Awakens. So we kind of get stalled on Finn.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, and then Rise of Skywalker really gives him no ending.
Yeah, and I agree with that critique. The subtle difference for him in this movie from the previous is that originally he was acting out of originally he was like, well, I'm just getting away from this situation because I don't like it. And then in this movie, it's more about, I'm going to get involved in this cause because I believe in it. Mm-hmm. So there is that small shift, because in Force Awakens, he's just trying to rescue Rey. And here he has to learn, no, it's actually worth getting involved in this fight. You're on the right side.
Yeah, but it doesn't come until later. He's still trying to rescue Rey. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, it's the microcosm for this whole movie. We're in a slow speed chase, which, by the way, a couple Rogue One references in this movie. One is the hyperspace tracking that was first mentioned in Rogue One, and the other is the ship that Leia's on is the Radis.
Yep.
So yeah.
By the way, no surprise that Kylo Ren is a great pilot given his pedigree. You don't think about that, but you're like, wait a minute, your dad was Han Solo, your mom's a trained Jedi leader, it's got
your
all
uncle,
force.
Your uncle blew up the Death Star.
Yeah, you got that all in the kid.
And his grandfather.
Exactly. So it makes perfect sense that he'd be the guy capable of, piloting and, doing stuff and, taking it to the opponent.
It's almost a shame we didn't get more, to be honest. I mean, we got the sequences here and they pay off in a really emotional way. But we probably could have seen more of that from him. He should be the best pilot in the galaxy. Though I guess Poe has that claim as well, or thinks he does.
But we should have seen at least one, dogfight between the two of them. At least
once. That would have been fabulous. Get the two of them.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
I like obviously the connection Kylo to Leia.
In many ways, that goes back to Empire. At the end of Empire with Luke and Vader.
Yeah.
That same idea. And I love the fact that he hesitates. It's the one thing he cannot bring himself to do. And it comes back big time in Rise of Skywalker when it's her that saves him.
Let's all bow our heads for the loss of Admiral Akbar.
For the last time. For the last time. He was
killed off screen. It's funny that people got so upset about that.
That was such a crock.
He has like about a couple lines in Return of the Jedi, and everybody thinks he's I don't know, Star Wars Jesus or something. But
some person came up with the idea that Akbar should have been in Holdo's shoes, and thusly to get Holdo out of the picture, and thusly Akbar's death became a big deal for people. But it's like, come on, I sympathize with Akbar fans who lost Akbar off screen, but
now I wish that Ole Miss, I've said it before on this podcast, I wish that Ole Miss would have gotten Admiral Akbar as their mascot. Like I said, I would have bought so many Ole Miss shirts.
It would have been perfect. Yeah.
The University of Oregon gets permission from Disney to have Donald Duck in their merch. Why can't Ole Miss have Admiral Akbar merch?
All right, so let's talk about flying Leia.
Space Leia.
I don't really have a problem with her having the Force abilities to do this. It just looks so bad.
It looks stiff, and I think that's the problem.
It looks like they just have a mannequin and they're just like swinging it on a string. It just looks bad.
Well, like you said, it's
how gorgeous this movie is. That's just the worst special effects that they had. Anyway, but
no, I was gonna say no. Given all the dynamic elements that you have around her, the debris field, all the stuff that's floating her. I love the moment when she cuts right through the hologram of the ship.
Yeah.
Where her body cuts across that. But just the idea of she's very stiff. She's an extended arm and the rest of her body at an angle. And that's the only thing that's moving. And that's the one thing that took me out. That's why everybody compares it to Mary Poppins, because it looks like a special effect from 60, 70 years ago.
Oh, Chewie eating porgs.
Yay!
Another favorite moment. This is humor without, gags. It's
it's the same as the monkey lizard.
Yeah, it's just and Chewie's like this is when Chewie becomes a vegan, This is why I couldn't have lived on a farm. If I would have seen Bessie the cow, I wouldn't have been able to eat steaks. I just can't do it. I have to believe that my food comes from a plastic package in a store.
I do envy people that did not have problems with um, Leia in that scene the first time around, because it is so jarring and it does take you out of the movie. And by the end of this movie, I was in the same shoes you were, Aaron, where I was like, do I like this? Did I like that movie? Did Star Wars just jump the shark for me? And a lot of it goes back to that scene. It
And
was just so odd.
by the way, I love, and again, sorry, I love this scene between Luke and R2. So, hey, Sacred Island, watch the language, I mean, but then
This is
and
where
when,
you see the old Luke.
yeah, and then when R2 plays the hologram of Leia, I just think this whole scene is just well conceived. R2 being the manipulator.
Well, it makes sense because it's R2 that gives him the original call. It was R2's message that
Well,
Luke stumbled upon.
let's go further back. R2 has a lot of stock in this fight, and he's been around since day one, and now to see Luke peter out, he's probably like, hey, no, 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 no. So it would make sense that he would.
That he would, pull this card. Yeah.
But I just love that scene from Chewie eating the porgs to R2 and Luke. Just really well done.
So before we get into some of the critiques, I mean, like that was definitely one with Leia, and then now we're gonna get into some of this side quest stuff with Finn and Rose and the slow speed chase and all these rough spots. I did want to mount a minor defense for Rian Johnson, because I think all of us agree that he was really sort of painted into a corner with this movie. He might have had the toughest job of any director on a Star Wars movie ever. And, just to give you context, this is the sequel to the biggest U.S. film ever. This is an immediate follow up to a $1 billion worldwide film in Rogue One. Obviously, it has Star Wars on the name of it. So he's trying to live up to all these massive expectations. And then everything in Force Awakens sort of painted him into a particular corner. All the loose ends that they had to tie up.
Well, not even loose ends, but like we talked about earlier, I mean, there was really no character building exposition done in The Force Awakens. It's like, okay, we've got these new people, and you just get cursory stuff.
They're all mystery boxes.
So
we talk about the JJ mystery box, but the new characters were all mystery boxes by the end of that first film. You didn't know anything about any of them.
Yeah, and it creates a dynamic where it leaves Ryan with the task of having to explain who each one of them is, present them as fully realized characters, and continue a story. And that's a lot to do in 2 hours.
Well, and that being said, though, he didn't need to spend 40% of the movie running out of gas.
That's true.
They could have gotten a crate. They could have gotten crate sooner. They could have, I'm just saying, it's just this is where it starts. Like really, I know Empire. I know Empire has the whole asteroid chase, but it's a much more, nail biting. It's faster moving than this. But yeah, no, you're right. You're right, Dave. It's Ryan, and he was also he's trying to do, everything in this movie, and it would be interesting to hear, get Rian Johnson drunk and say, if you could go back and do it over again, what changes would you make?
And I think that's a point that I think people have made before, and I would agree with, regarding if we had gone to crate first, kind of end the slow speed chase first, get to create a dynamic where the resistance is having to hold off while Rose and Finn go try to get more help. Maybe it would have created a better dynamic, because at least at that point, you're not looking at them slowly inching away, but you're asking them to hold out, kind of to steal a Lord of the Rings reference, a battle Helm's Deep situation where trying to wait to hold out till the dawn.
And by the way, I know that I know why Ryan Johnson did it. It's to create more tension in the story. But just from a leadership standpoint, Holdo should have just said to Poe, "Yeah, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. This is the plan. All right, so I'm going to need you to go do this." Not like
read him the riot act.
Yeah, not spank him in front of everybody, and then yeah. As much as I like the Holdo character, it's like, why don't you just say, "Yeah, this is what we're going to do."
But again, I understand the opposite argument in that particular argument, because it's just like, well, she doesn't owe him that. He's a subordinate, and she doesn't have to tell him what they're planning to do at all, especially since he's just been demoted. And like that was Princess Leia's like last act before slipping into a coma, is to demote this guy. So now she's gonna like tell him everything. I within the context of the story, it makes sense to me why she wouldn't. But of course, it creates that conflict and the tension, and it's why there's why they butt heads throughout this whole scene sequence.
Now, the other thing I was going to say is it odd that Holdo and Poe do not know one another, given the size of the Resistance as we know it?
Yeah, because like there are moments where like by the end of this movie, it's like it feels like the entire Resistance is on the Millennium Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's not the case because there are other ships off caravanning around because of JJ's boy. I forget his name. The character actor who he puts in everything.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, he's one of the pilots, and I guess like, how do you explain he wasn't in the second movie? And like, well, he was on this other mission, So it's like, okay, so the director himself has said there were other Resistance members elsewhere. But it's a good question because you're like, they look so small in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You would kind of think everybody would know everybody else.
Or at least the idea of, the best pilot in the Resistance, a squadron commander, knowing a vice admiral, and again, I go back to bringing logic. I understand that in Star Wars, the chain of command and is very fast and loose. It gets played around with a lot. So the idea of, okay, your vice admiral, your admiral, your commander, your captain. I mean, even Poe kind of goes, I don't care what you call me. You can call me whatever you like. So but that idea of, wait a minute, you two are characters who are important to Leia and you've never met. How did that happen?
So let's talk about Rose, since she's now in the business here. First of all, I liked her character from the get-go. Kelly Marie Tran was an awesome actress for that role as well. And so let's put aside, so we know in The Rise of Skywalker, she's not utilized at all. But how is that any different from Lando in going from Empire to Jedi? Because in Jedi, Lando has a couple lines, and he's flying up against the Death Star. But really, I bet if you did a timing thing, I bet they are probably treated the same way. Isn't that kind of what Star Wars does? In each act, you get a character, and then you get less of that character. I mean, Rose was not, and I'm not saying, I'm just kind of saying these to get a conversation started. She's not like one of the main characters. That's Poe, Rey, and Finn.
Can I put it to you this way? I heard somebody, I was watching a YouTube channel discussing, they were talking about Lord of the Rings. That's what's in my head. And they were discussing the character of Samwise Gamgee. And they're saying, he's not the protagonist of that story, but he's a hero of this story. Of this story, and Rose is much the same kind of level of character as Sam. She's not the protagonist. She's not the character whose arc we're going to follow through from beginning to end. But she is somebody who's going to represent the best values of what the movie's trying to project.
All right, so let's now you got me thinking about something different here. So
And now we're seeing Maz on screen right now, and I'd like to address that too eventually. But yeah, go ahead with Kelly
no,
Marie.
go ahead, talk about Maz. I won't forget about
Okay,
Maz.
so this
the
is a
fact that
waste.
she was done dirty here. Yeah,
this is a waste. This is a complete waste. And like they could have done a million different things with her. And they did this, and it just bothers me, right? From the moment that she appeared in in 7, I kind of earmarked her as being kind of a force sensitive surrogate, right? And she was. That's what she was. And yet they never really paid that off. I mean, I guess you could say in 9 they did a little bit with it, but I thought for sure she could be a really cool contrast to a Jedi. You could different insights into the Force, potentially a different kind of training that a Force sensitive person could get through her lens. There's a lot that could have happened there, and none of it did.
Because how old is she? I mean, Han tells us in Force Awakens that she's very old.
She's been running the bar for like 1,000 years.
So she's on a little similar age level as Yoda. So maybe she doesn't understand the Force as deeply as Yoda, obviously. But you'd figure in 1,000 years she's come to understand the dynamic of the Force. I picked up some things along the way.
So so I'm going to get to my. First of all, I agree with everything you said, Dave, because Maz is just a wasted character. She could have been just but I mean, the interesting thing, again, Rian Johnson was handed off this thing, and he had to decide, who are the characters that I want to, really explore.
Right.
So it gets back to your mystery box thing. But here's my deal. I was just thinking about this, because when you're talking about how Samwise is not the protagonist, I think that these sequel trilogy movies have too many protagonists. If you think about it, yes, in the original trilogy, we had Han, Luke, and Leia, and going up against Vader. But Han and Leia were always they're always side characters to Luke. It was ultimately Luke versus Vader. And you got a little bit of Han's character development, you got a little bit of Leia's character development, but it was mainly about Luke's development. I think in these 3 movies, it's like we're trying to tell all of Finn's story, we're trying to tell all of Rey's story, we're trying to tell as much of Poe's story as we can, we're trying to tell all of Kylo's story, then we're trying to figure out who Snoke is. It's like they put too much in the gumbo.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't at all. I mean, realistically, this is kind of the weird thing that comes from Force Awakens. When we start with Poe, but it's not a story. Then we move to Finn, and we think, oh, Finn is because primarily the trailers have been focused a lot on Finn, but it's not his story. Ultimately, it turns out to be revealed that it's Rey's story. And there's
just so much noise, with all this. You're right. I mean, because it's like, again, when I was in my band, in my Irish band, it's like we got a guitar player comping, we've got a mandolin player comping, and then I'm, comping on my drum, and it gets to, everybody's going dugga 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 at the same time, and it gets to be so noisy that eventually I would just stop, and like I had to say, I've got to simplify what I'm doing, because it's just making everything else muddy. And so I wish they would have just said, we're going to focus mainly on Rey's story.
Would the sequels have been better off? And I think you brought this point up previously.
There's Dave.
Oh, do you hear me? Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, we've made the point before, I think, that would the sequels have been better off if the older characters had been killed off right away?
Not necessarily killed off, just sent off. They can put them in a home.
Retired in a home or something. This is like give them more space to breathe, the new characters to breathe, and us a chance to get to know them a little bit better. And like that's part of the weakness of Force Awakens. You're in the position in this movie of having to learn who these people actually are and what their weaknesses are and what their dreams are. And like Rey is mostly a blank slate. I think you understand that she wants to belong and she wants to find her place. But again, like we don't know how deeply and until you really get into it here. And I love this sequence with Luke training her, because it cuts right to the heart of it.
Well, and it's something that she says when they're the first time that they're in the temple, that she has this power and she's trying to find herself, and she'll even repeat it again a few more times. She's trying to find her place in all of this. She's trying to find out who she is. So she's very much telling you, I am a blank slate. I only know who I am, or what I am. I don't know who I am. And, she's wrapped her identity around the idea of her parents. She's wrapped her identity around the idea of, having this power, but not knowing who she is. So
I also want to say it's a really powerful thing. The Force connection thing that she has with Kylo, right? This is a new thing. It's really intriguing for us as viewers because it's like, what is this all about, right? This is a curveball. But it's really powerful thing that happens for her before she can even start to train. So she's already in a position of being distracted and confused and having this other voice in her ear, and that's going to limit her.
It creates a wonderful dynamic for putting her and Kylo, the protagonist and the antagonist, in direct conflict and continuous conflict without having to both put them in the same room, which I think is really well done.
I have to say, I'm going to take us on a dovetail here for a second. This lesson that Luke is teaching her, about balance and how it's, for the Jedi to say the Force is all theirs, or it basically he's making the argument that you can't be all good or all bad. And actually we saw that in Return of the Jedi. What's the first thing we see Luke Skywalker do in Return of the Jedi? It's the first thing we see him do.
Choke a guard.
Yeah.
What?
Choke a guard.
Yeah, he chokes Gamorrean guards. I mean, that's straight out of Darth Vader's playbook. That's dark side stuff, right? And so, Luke is, again, so people, I think Luke recognizes that there needs to be that whole idea of a gray Jedi, I think
balance.
Right. It's like anybody who said, okay, so you can fight in defense, but you're still going to be harnessing some aggression to defend yourself. It's so.
It goes to the second lesson that he's going to give her about the history of the Jedi.
Playing Stu on Spotify.
Oh, no, hold on. Yeah, no, hold on. Stop.
That's awesome.
I don't know what that was. I don't know what
Fredo's apartment is haunted by Siri.
It sounded like a disco in the middle of
exactly. Hey, look, we're going to a casino. What can I say? No, I was going to say the idea of what the Force is.
I'm sorry. I like the Porgs destroying the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon and taking off Chewbacca. Again, just awesome. And they did. I'm sorry, Fredo, to interrupt you, but they did the Porgs so right, where it's just like little 3-5 second vignettes that make you go ha, and then they move on to other stuff. So it was great.
Add a little color.
Yeah, particularly because it's so gray. When it's raining, and we're gonna get to another moment right now where they Ben and Rey connect. But just the idea of going back right quick to what the essence of the Force is, and that it's this energy field that doesn't belong to anybody because it belongs to everybody. It's generated by everybody. It's I think the most we ever get in a Star Wars movie to describe the Force in terms of as a religion, as opposed to anything else. Because you really don't get a lot of discussion from the Jedi, whether it's in the prequels or the Clone Wars, about the nature of the Force. Aside from those few episodes with Yoda at the end of season 6, basically the Jedi very much dogmatic. This is what the Force is, and if you're on the light side, you're with us. If you're on the dark side, you're an enemy. We got to destroy you. And that's part of what Luke is trying to teach Rey is that idea of no, we're not all light or all dark. We're everything.
So, we've talked about how much I hated the whole Reylo thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
and what this just interaction between her and Kylo just now is why I hated that whole thing, because it wasn't like Han and Leia who didn't get along in A New Hope. It was Kylo was being manipulative and abusive from the get-go, and we get a payoff of a big smooch, in The Rise of Skywalker. I just think it sends a bad message. So I think he can be redeemed. He can, save her life. Spoiler alert. Save her in Rise of Skywalker. But to pay it off with that, then just I don't know. And I'm sorry, this right here. I
we're about to get to your favorite
on the beach. It's the voice from Thunder Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Keep your hands in the cart, kids.
Okay, so I know we kind of skipped a bit regarding what the plan is for Finn and for Rose, but the idea of the Master Codebreaker. Now, when that was first introduced in the theater, my thought is, oh, she's sending them to get Lando. Because I don't know why, but that's what I thought they were. The fact that they're not telling you his name, the fact that they're trying to be all mysterious about it, I figured, okay, you're gonna see a character from the original trilogy.
And another big thing we didn't get a payoff. I want Benicio del Toro's. I want that character. I want Dia, or what was his name? DJ. I wanted DJ in, and I was expecting DJ in The Rise of Skywalker, and nope, he's just gone. It's.
By the way, the designs of Canto Bight, I know that not a lot of people didn't like it. Did it feel more Fifth Element than Star Wars for you?
I don't know. It felt more Earth than Star Wars. It felt very based in things that are familiar to us. So I don't necessarily like that. There's a lot of stuff in Attack of the Clones that's similar. Like you've got the sports bar and you've got the freaking diner. Like things like that just feel too familiar.
Or even Padme's lake, house on, in Italy.
Yeah. I mean, this is like you're at freaking Monte Carlo, right? Or
right.
Or something like that, and it's just like, okay, we all get it, Space Monte Carlo, but I guess the execution here I don't like, and I guess if I'm going to complain about anything with this movie, it really is going to boil down to the execution. I think the idea behind Canto Bight is good. We haven't really dealt with this theme of austerity in Star Wars in the same way. It's like people keeping other people down, and how wealth can factor into that. And I like that they didn't like shy away from that as a theme. And I like the fact that that Rian Johnson tried to tackle that. But it's just like, again, some of this stuff just feels, I don't know. It doesn't work as well for me as a lot of the rest of the movie.
Again, this is what's interesting is
there's a shuttle, Parkers. Sorry.
Yeah.
Aaron's favorite character of the entire trilogy. No, but I don't know. In some ways, I think part of the dynamic with Canto Bight is that it's trying to hit some higher motifs and some higher lessons than previous Star Wars movies have kind of hit in some ways. The idea of what war is, the idea of those who profit from continued bloodshed and chaos, the idea of just the fact that it's an ugly business, but so many of the people who, are put down, or who rise because of it, turn around and start abusing others. So, but it's done so. I guess that's part of the design, is that it's done in such a garish nature so as to be off-putting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come off as Star Wars. In a way, we kind of describe like, so much of stuff out of The Mandalorian is looking and feeling like Star Wars. That didn't necessarily feel like Star Wars per se, but that could be a trap unto itself.
By the way, coming up here again, another element that I just thought was funny. I love the caretakers and how he
Yeah,
used that as well. Again, these are just little 2-second, lighten the mood type moments. When a rock crashes on their cart. But
just action reaction. It's because the thing is, you've already established that Ray's done something wrong. They're not happy with her, and then she does something else that they're not going to be happy with.
as that
Just
thing
look
funny.
down, slow look up, disappointed look. Yeah.
And we're coming up on the I think the only time in the only time Luke Skywalker or anybody has ever said Darth Sidious instead of the Emperor. They say Darth Sidious. I think Yoda said Darth Sidious in Episode 3,
Right.
but I just thought it was interesting that he said allowed Darth Sidious to. I just think that was interesting writing. Is all.
Mhm.
But
That would show you that he's communicated with Ben and Yoda over the years and has gotten the full story, and it makes a lot of sense narratively.
And I like the idea because, in many ways, we know that from Force Awakens that a lot of what happened in the original trilogy has now passed on to legend. It's only been 30 years, but it's already been canonized, so to speak. So the idea that when Rey tells Luke, "You saw the good in the most evil man in the galaxy, the most hated man in the galaxy," so but that so you're able to redeem him and topple the empire, has already passed on to myth for people. And in some ways, that's what Luke is trying to grasp with the idea of having been the myth and having failed like any normal person would fail.
And I think, we chalk up the Luke, for all three of us. Luke's character works in this movie, but for a lot of people he doesn't. And it's this idea that he could fail and that failure would stay with him and that he wouldn't just bounce back or just overcome it right away. And a lot of people just they didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where this movie struggled the most in trying to win hearts and minds, is people had this headcanon when it came to Luke Skywalker in particular of
Mm-hmm.
he's a certain way and I believe him to be
Frozen Dave again.
this thing or that thing. And
Yeah.
it just, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
As I was saying, people had this headcanon. Yeah, people had this headcanon in mind for Luke coming into this thing. And JJ got to sidestep that in part 7 because he's just like, oh, well, we'll just show Luke up at the end. Ryan had to actually do something with him. And again, people are really split on whether this works. I think that it does. I think all three of us think that it does.
I think it's a power. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it's because of I think ultimately for me, it's because of the way it pays off at the end. You can have him have those kinds of struggles if you get to see that catharsis eventually.
And I think it's a powerful lesson to kind of present to people. And look, it's a very complex one, and that's part of what makes the decisions that Ryan does here so compelling. Because the easiest thing to have done is say, "Oh yeah, Luke was off somewhere looking for the first Jedi Temple. He was trying to connect this way and that way," much in the same way that I believe it was Duel of the Fates wanted to rewrite Luke's struggle. But I think it actually takes bigger, brass tacks, so to speak, to do what they did here, to show him no, he failed. He struggled with that failure. Because at the end of it, he was still very much, even though he had listened to a legend, he was still very much a man. And, you start studying or learning about any of our heroes or legends of modern time, and you get to find out that so many of them struggle with being that image to so many people, but also being a human being with loves and hates and likes and dislikes and disappointment and whatnot. And if we can't see it in our heroes, you're not going to be able to see it in other people. Did we lose Aaron?
Nope, I'm here.
Okay, I was going to say.
I'm just watching.
Yeah, no.
Again, I dug the DJ character here. Apparently, I just again reading something. Apparently, he was supposed to be Darth Maul in Episode 1 until that character got kind of cut down, and it went to Ray Park.
Which in a weird way, I think worked better in the long run.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Because I love this character. I love the character of DJ in regards to what he represents. He is in a way Han if he never met Leia. He's Han if he never meets Luke and Obi-Wan at that cantina. He's just out for himself. To heck with the galaxy. I'm just going to do what I want to do in order to profit the best way.
No, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Like I said, I think that would have been a neat story to see continued. Maybe they need to use him some way in the Rise of Skywalker. I don't know, but I thought it was one of those wasted characters.
I think in some ways, yeah, because particularly the way it gets left off at the end of this, I know we'll get to it. It kind of gets left off. The last time Finn and DJ look at one another like, okay, there's going to be further down the line, but it never happens.
I didn't think I would like BB-8 as much as I do. in the Force Awakens, I didn't think I was going to like him as much. But I think he won me over the minute he did the thumbs up with the lighter. But it's just I thought BB-8 was so well done here as well. Again, it's just some fun moments.
When I first saw the lighter, I read that as him lifting his middle finger for some reason. I never thought thumbs up until I read other people's reaction to it, and it's like, oh, okay.
Well, if he's only got one finger, well, it's not a finger, it's a lighter.
Well, now we have the giant horse animals.
The Fathiers.
Yeah. Again, I like the concept a lot.
I'm getting a Newsies vibe.
It's a hard knock life for. Sorry.
Yeah, basically. Don't get me wrong. Again, it's.
And yes, everybody, I know that's Annie. I'm not confusing my musicals. Go ahead, Fredo.
Yeah, I don't think your wife would let you be so misconstrued about musicals. She would pull your Sanger season pass. But it's just the idea of, again, there's a great idea here. It's execution. The idea of finding the ones that have been downtrodden, because that's really who the resistance is fighting for. They're fighting for the downtrodden, the oppressed, the ones who've been stepped on by the powerful, and they're trying to upend the dynamics of the galaxy.
Well, see,
so it makes sense that they would fight for them.
And here's the deal: is that you don't need them, galloping around on Fathiers. They could have, DJ could have swiped a shuttle. They could have been on a shuttle and on their way,
Or they could have used the Fathiers as a diversion. They go one way, we go another.
Yeah,
that is just very literal subtext. Yeah, it's we are going to trample the rich here.
But remember, Rose says earlier, I wish I could put my fist through this whole beautiful town. Mm-hmm. And she gets to do it right here. Okay, that alien is straight out of Fifth Element. I'm sorry. And that guy's just getting Mardi Gras doubloons.
That was Mark Hamill voicing that guy, by the way. And actually, you asked about whether or not you like the. Does it seem like Canto Bight was too real worldish? And I actually kind of liked. There's some in the Rise of Skywalker that's that way. When they went to Kijimi, that's Japanese architecture all the way. It didn't bother me. It really didn't bother me all that much because it fit within Star Wars, but it was different, you know.
And I think part of it is, and maybe that's just me, we understand that Star Wars are movies inspired by other cinema, the Western, the samurai movie, the science fiction serial, that kind of thing. So we understand that a lot of the imagery that it's going to generate, that it's going to have, is going to be borrowed from other cinema. So, the idea of borrowing Monte Carlo and having, and having it fit here makes sense in some way. Or the idea of borrowing the Japanese architecture for Kijimi, again, makes sense. A lot of it, I keep, I'll say it again, it's execution. It's how does it come off, and does it come off as organic, or does it feel like you just got stepped out of Star Wars into something else?
So interesting little thing again in this site that I'm looking at. It says Johnson had to do a lot of homework when preparing to direct The Last Jedi. He used 3 movies in particular to inspire the direction he took for the film. One was 12 O'Clock High for the aerial combat scenes. Another one was Three Outlaw Samurai for the sword fighting. And the last one was To Catch a Thief for the scale and grandeur. I've never seen any of the 3 of them. So
Now, I think I've seen To Catch a Thief a long time ago, and it was good. It makes sense, particularly here.
Well, this whole sequence too. Again, we've basically said it's for Rose's benefit, and Ryan Johnson. I mean, it's indulgent. He wanted us watch us tear down wealth, literally. But it benefits Rose.
Yeah, it does.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Froze again. I'm sorry.
I'm glad that they cut out a lot of this fathier chase because a lot of them get slaughtered along the way.
That's horrible.
That would have just brought the whole thing down. So, but here we got Luke connecting with the Force for the first time in a while. Which we kind of find interesting. He and Leia connect here.
Which you gotta imagine. I mean, given the strength and power that he has in the Force, that would be obvious to Kylo. That would be obvious to Snoke. Like it would be crystal clear that, oh wait, shoot, that's Luke Skywalker.
Leia, we get to see she comes to from this, and obviously we have a strong female protagonist, and we were just talking about how the Canto Bight stuff really benefits Rose. Holdo is a major character. This is the most feminist of all the Star Wars movies, in my opinion.
And you say that as we get shirtless, high pants Kylo Ren on the screen.
Perfect timing.
But it very much speaks to strong women making strong choices and controlling their own destiny, and it's not lost on me that a big chunk of the fan base took exception to this movie on many of those points specifically.
But then that speaks to my argument that that's why the Reylo thing is actually crappy because it takes away from that message. It's like, oh, he's just a bad boy. I can turn him. Or, oh, I just love him so much. I don't know. Everything boils down to you need a boyfriend, and that's where she should have just, kicked his McClunky and, kicked him to the curb, so that whole Reylo insistence upon them, and that's not what Ryan Johnson was getting at with these Force connections. He was talking about intimacy, yes, but we misconstrue, whatever. We conflate. I can't talk because I just had a beer, but we conflate intimacy with sexual things.
With sexual closeness.
And intimacy is like when she and Kylo, yes, are developing a bond for better or for worse. but that does not mean that it is a romantic bond. And that's what tons of people went to, that, oh, they love each other. And it's
Or,
just like that. It takes away from the character building of Ray. And like you said, that feminist, and this is really bold for three guys to be talking about feminism, but it just takes away from it. And that's not what Ryan Johnson was trying to get across. I know it wasn't, but that's where the fan base took it, and it just torqued me off. And then J.J. Abrams had him kiss, and now I'm mad. I need another beer.
We can talk about the cave while you're getting yourself a beer here.
No, I don't need another beer.
This cave sequence. I love what Ryan Johnson. Have you guys seen Ryan Johnson's interviews about this particular scene?
No.
Well, he basically speaks to what would be her worst fear. And like that's what we encounter in Empire Strikes Back. So he's looking back to the source material, and in Luke's case, it was a personal connection with your greatest enemy. And in Rey's case, it's you're not connected to anyone,
right.
because that's what she wants more than anything else. He's like, let's get to the heart of the character, and that's what she needs, and that's what she wants, and we're not going to give it to her.
In many ways, she wants to be special. She wants to have something that makes her unique. And what this cave sequence is showing her is, no, you're not unique. You're one of an endless number. You're one of the millions of ants that we see every day who has no value, no merit, nothing that makes them different from anything else. And I think that's that fear that exists in her, that she has no value within herself because she was thrown away, so to speak, by her parents, is what's really driving her to connect with the Force, to seek out Luke, but also it's fueling that bond she has with Kylo. It's that idea of, well, I want to connect with somebody, and in some ways, that bond may not be a positive. I mean, yeah, to get to Aaron's point, the bond between her and Kylo is being formed. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a positive one in parts. In some ways, it's very negative because it's tapping into the worst aspects of herself, and it's tapping into some of the worst aspects of Kylo Ren as well.
And it's also, we've talked about this before, where we all think it should have gone is that she should have been connected to nobody, because that's what would have made this story special, is that you don't have, it's not about who you came from, it's about who you are, and you're influenced by so many different things. And that's what this sequence was talking about. Yeah, you want to know who your parents are, but that doesn't matter. What matters is who you are. Mm-hmm. Now, and so as much criticism as we give Ryan Johnson for, not taking what JJ set up for him, JJ did the exact same thing. That was set up clear as a bell, saying, hey, she doesn't have to be anybody, and you should just run with that. It's a better story. And he decided to make her a Palpatine. So,
I mean, and in some ways because it's easier. And look, let's be fair. A lot of people were, because of the mystery box element, they were told to expect that there was a payoff to that there was a connection to something we've seen before. When I think the more powerful, more interesting story is that she is not connected to any of this, that in many ways she is free from everything that's come before, and she can choose whatever path she wants to choose. She can go down the dark side, she can go up to the light side. Just a question of where she's going to go. And right here, we're getting that juxtaposition with her, Kylo, and Luke.
By the way,
I think this.
I just love that, how that whole thing is practical. How they blew apart an entire hut. It's not CGI. It's just they're pulling a bunch of bricks away. I thought it was great. Anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the Palpatine reveal for her in Rise of Skywalker, I think it serves one purpose and one purpose only. It's to give you some measure of doubt about where she'll end up. It's like, oh, maybe she could be bad. So we'll give you the lightning sequence, and we'll tell you that she's a Palpatine, so that you won't be sure that she
But
won't give in to the dark side at some point.
I totally get your point, but did we worry about that with Luke? I think, in Return of the Jedi, I think our biggest fear was that Luke would die.
Well, you go back to the stuff you were talking about with the Gamorrean guards, him choking them, being clad in black. And by the time you get to the final sequence with him and Vader and the Emperor is taunting him and saying, hey, strike me down with all of your hatred and your journey to the dark side will be complete. Like, we all watched that as kids, and we're like, is that true? Is he going to turn to the dark side if he kills the Emperor here? Mm-hmm. It's like, what's going to happen? So you get that. You did get kind of like that moment of doubt, but I mean, like, I think we all understood that he was our hero and that he was going to ultimately do the right thing.
Speaking of which,
that was all an allegory to the 40 days in the desert, right?
But speaking of which, juxtapose that idea, the idea that, if Luke strikes down the Emperor, he'll turn to the dark side, with this moment, the true reveal of what happened between him and Ben in Ben's quarters when, he flicks on the lightsaber for a brief moment. He has that moment of instinct that says, hey, he's going to the dark side, kill him now. And he hesitates. But that moment, it's all that takes for Ben to wake up, see him standing above him with a lightsaber lit up, and go, oh crap, he's found me, and for everything to go to crap.
Luke is a human. He's a flawed human being, and he makes mistakes, and it's a really effective piece of storytelling, by the way, too, like to show the 3 different versions of that scene. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great storytelling technique that he borrows to do that.
But by the way, I was just thinking, as I was thinking back to Return of the Jedi, the only reason Luke does not strike down Palpatine is because Vader blocks this blow.
Yeah.
The only reason Luke does not go down to the dark side is because Darth Vader saves him, weirdly enough.
I'm sorry, I was giddy at this point when they pan. You see Yoda's head.
Oh yeah,
I was clapping. I think I was literally clapping in the theater.
Yeah. I think that was because I saw this opening night over at the Broad Theater. Finn McCool had done like a bus of us, and we just went together, and everybody just started cheering. I love the young Skywalker.
And the people who got so bent out of shape about how Yoda looked, it's like they used the same mold. It's just like basically the exact same. It's a replica of the puppet. So there are some better. What I figured out is with Yoda, it's all about the angle of the camera and the lighting.
Yeah.
Because there are some points where he looks exactly like Empire Strikes Back Yoda. And
I love the moment when he just flicks the finger and boom. And because of what it says about him, he's, in a way, of course, Yoda's way older and starts laughing like every little old grandpa and grandma might do.
I like how this is Henri. He's just Henri Yoda.
Mm-hmm. He's Henri Dagobah Yoda. He's the same Yoda that you see when you first meet, that he's just picking on Luke because Luke doesn't know.
That shot right there where he's in front of the fire, that's straight, looks exactly like Empire Strikes Back. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about fan service not being a dirty word necessarily. It can be a good thing, and here it's a good thing. We get to see Yoda again. We get to see Yoda chastising Luke. Yeah. But it's lovely. It's wonderful. You get to see this old friend and these 2 people squabbling again, and it takes you back.
And I love the fact that even though you've already, he's still teaching him.
Yeah.
Yoda's been dead for over 35 years or 30 years, and he's still teaching Luke. He still sees Luke as his pupil because, and I think in our professional careers in our lives, there's mentors that we come across in our lives that okay, you develop a relationship with them later on, but they never stop teaching you. And Yoda is very much that way with Luke. I love the idea of okay, pass on what you have learned. It's what I told you what to do, and
So okay, so let's now talk about a criticism of the prequels. One of the things I think the best thing they did with the prequels is to go back and make Episode One Yoda CGI Yoda, because Episode One Yoda, the original one, looked awful because they decided, well, he has to be younger. It's like a guy who lives to be 900 years old is he really going to make that big of a change in 30 years? You know what I mean? So it's like they decided to sculpt a new Yoda and it looked awful. They could have done the exact same thing what they did here, except maybe not as much gray hair, not as much wrinkles, maybe, and it would have satisfied a lot of people. But yeah, that episode one Yoda was just awful.
you know what it is in part? It's the mustache. That the bristly mustache that he has, because they try to lean into the Albert Einstein for Episode One, and it didn't work.
And have you ever known a ship to take so long in hyperspace to get back to a fleet? I don't know. It's just everybody's taking forever to get where they need to be. But
I think part of it is the idea of the resistance was out in the middle of nowhere. The further driving, they're being driven even further out into the further end of nowhere. But it's just, and again, Rose makes the hard decisions. She's like, okay, here's what we need to do. You need something that's valuable. There you go.
Doesn't even hesitate. Yeah.
No.
Well, this is like where we're gonna start getting into the really good stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, it's a movie that certainly has its flaws, but to me, this is some of the best Star Wars you're ever gonna see.
Can I say? I'll say it this way. I think this is the bravest of the 3 sequel movies because it's the one that's not afraid of making choices that will and did upset fans.
Well, it's also, sorry to interrupt you, but it's also the one that's teaching you a broader lesson we talked about earlier. It's teaching you a broader lesson than just, is Rey a Palpatine or not? It's talking, like you said, it's a message about power. It's a message about morality. The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, they're really not a morality tale like the original trilogy was.
But I also think, and in some ways, this is the difficulty when you're talking about sagas, shared universes, modern media. There's almost becomes a difficulty when you're dealing with properties of this caliber because there's a lot of desperate attempt to protect it, to protect its essence. And what happens is both the fan base and the creators become awed by what it is, and they don't want it to change. And that can be good and that can be bad, because it can be good because you have to preserve what value it has, but it can also create a dynamic where you're not making any changes, you're not progressing within the story, you're just repeating it over and over again, and that can be tiring and boring every time.
I was listening to Rian Johnson speaking of Knives Out. He was talking about how he put that whole thing together. Mm-hmm. And he said he essentially had to deconstruct the murder mystery in order to create the movie that he wanted to make. And he did the same thing with Star Wars. He had to deconstruct the entire thing. You talk about like a master chef who will deconstruct a dish, take it down to its bare bones, and then build something wholly new that retains the essence of what you've seen before, but is a different thing.
And that's what he does in his movies. At least that's what he attempts to do. And you can talk about his level of success. Again, some of the execution you could hope would be better. But when it really works, he's giving you something you've never seen before, and like here, like the very question of what is Star Wars, it's like what how do we define it, and
Right.
he attacks it and he says, your idea of what Star Wars is, I'm going to just challenge it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna make it into something different, and we're gonna see where it goes. And I'll be honest, at the conclusion of this movie, the first time I watched it, I was struggling with it, but after multiple viewings, I came away very excited about the future of Star Wars. It's like
I agree with you. This
something different.
This is the one again. I've said had pain meds when I saw it the first time, but every time I watch it, I like it more. It's yeah, it's a good story. It's I think it's I don't see why people have such a big problem. My biggest problem is the slow speed chase. That's it. So,
and I guess I always say, I mean, it comes whenever you're talking about a property like Star Wars, people have a preconceived notion of what it is, of what it has to do, or what it needs to be, etc. And it can prove difficult when somebody challenges that. At the same time, though, I would say you much rather that than say what the last few non-Harry Potter movies for that franchise did, which really don't challenge much of anything, really just keep doing the same thing as they've done before, and it becomes rather, rather bland.
Paint by numbers.
So
very much.
So, from the very first episode of this podcast, we talked about, checking your expectations at the door. And I remember listening to people leading up to The Last Jedi. The thing they wanted to see more than anything was Luke Skywalker light up the green lightsaber and, go whomping into town, just and go nuts. And so everybody went into this movie that's why I told my best friend, I've said this story before. He said, "Oh man, I'm hearing a lot of taking the kids to go see The Last Jedi, and I'm not seeing such great reviews." And I told him literally, I said, "Leave your expectations at the door. It's a good movie. It's the most different Star Wars movie that you'll ever see, and I like it for that. It stands out. It stands out. It doesn't feel like a rehash or just kind of stagnant. It's a good story.
It's cognizant of what it is and what it is trying to do, and sometimes that can be quite difficult with some of these movies, just because from the standpoint of, like compared to like something like Rise of Skywalker, and where it knows what it wants to do, but doesn't feel comfortable enough doing any one thing, so it tries doing a bunch of different things.
All right, so I want to talk about real quick. The Star Wars Underworld podcast has talked about this before. This scene that's coming up right now, we got Rey and Kylo in the elevator, and then we're getting into Snoke's throne room. And one of the guys on there, the big problem he has is that this is almost a shot for shot rehash of the throne room scene in Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And almost, I mean, the dialogue is almost the exact same. Now, we can retcon all we want, and now we know what we know in The Rise of Skywalker, and was it Palpatine putting those words into Snoke's mouth and stuff like that? But do you think Rian Johnson did this on purpose, or was it kind of like after they shot it, they went, "Oh crap, this looks exactly like the end of Return of the Jedi"?
I think he did it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, we're talking about subverting expectations. I remember the very first time I watched this, I'm like, oh my God, she's confronting him already? Like, what are they going to do? How are they going to survive this? How's she going to survive this? What's going to be the outcome of this? I have no flippin' clue. And that's drama. I mean, that's regardless of whether you've kind of seen a similar sequence before, you've never seen it at this stage of the saga before. You've never seen that confrontation occur this early in the saga, and that's why it's
Yeah, but doesn't it take
kind of mind bending.
But doesn't it take you out of it just a little bit when he's like, okay, now look out the window, your fleet is lost, and he can't be turned, he's mine, it's like all these things are like just step for step with Return of the Jedi, and it is.
Except that we all lauded Force Awakens for doing the same thing.
No, I disagree that Force Awakens did that. I will still.
Hello, Skywalker base, Death Star.
Star Killer and Death Star.
That whole final battle is a rehash of A New Hope.
I talk about the rhyming in Star Wars, and some of it is intentional, but how much, and you never really know. But yeah, I mean,
this is some Huey Lewis, I Want a New Drug, and Ray Parker Jr. Ghostbusters thing going on here. I mean,
I think it's intentional though, because it's like it's meant for you to feel like, oh gosh, this is just like the end of Return of the Jedi. But why is it occurring halfway through the second movie and not at the end of the third? And it's unsettling for that reason. You're like, these are the same beats. Where are we going? Why are we seeing this now? I mean, at least this is with the internal dialogue I had when I watched it for the first time, and it's where the movie like recaptured me. Previously, I had been struggling, and then it was like, whoa, okay, this is crazy.
Well, we know from what we've seen in Return of the Jedi how it's supposed to come off, how it's supposed to pay it off. The difference is going to be how it comes up differently here, and I think that that is in some ways the design of it. It's the reason why you call back is to show how different it is this time. Oh, speaking of different, speaking of similar, we get Captain Phasma again.
By the way, can I say you've seen the alternate scene with Finn versus Phasma. They should have, where she then wastes the 4 stormtrooper. They should have left that in. That was such a better deal than what they ended up with. But yeah,
what they ended up with worked okay. But talk about wasted characters. I mean, you got nothing from Phasma in these 2 movies. Nothing.
Yeah,
Phasma and Maz Kanata have been hanging out for half this movie. So.
Yeah, they along with Finn ultimately end up in the car of characters who got the short end in this trilogy.
Yeah.
And
we like Holdo ultimately. I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, brother, was that the same stun pistol that Leia had in A New Hope that she uses right here?
I don't know if it's the exact same. It's the same model. Yeah, it's like
the one that she uses to shoot that stormtrooper at the start of A New Hope.
I am noticing a lot of space jewelry now, though, Aaron. So.
No, Carrie Fisher wanted her space jewelry, dang it, and you gave her what she wants.
So again, spoiler alert, we're coming up to the end of Snoke, and I'll never forget. I'd never forget sitting there, and when the lightsaber slices him, I went, "Oh, McClunky!" I mean, I literally out loud went, "Oh, oh, we're doing this." Okay, did not see that coming from 8 million miles away.
But you know what? And some people didn't. A lot of people didn't like it, but it was the right choice.
Yeah,
we've reached the end of the story with Snoke, and some people are like, well, we didn't know where he came from, we didn't know who he was, blah blah blah. It didn't matter.
Well, see, here's the thing: is that in the original trilogy, you had 2 movies basically for us to understand Vader as the baddie, and then in Return of the Jedi, then we get Palpatine. Even though we got a phone call from Palpatine in Empire, but otherwise it was Darth Vader was the baddie. these two movies, it's been who's the bad guy? Who's in charge here? Is it Snoke or is it Kylo? Who's the bad guy I'm supposed to be afraid of? And so,
Right.
again, I think that Ryan Johnson made the right choice, that it had to be, had to get Snoke out of the picture.
Well, no, and that's, we said this before when we were discussing Rise of Skywalker. The idea of ultimately it's Kylo Ren who's got to be the villain of the story, because he's the first. You introduce him as the villain, you build him as the villain. He's supposed to be the antagonist. The
He
Force,
should have been in the very first movie. He should have been in The Force Awakens.
right,
We shouldn't have had Snoke at all.
right. But he should. But the idea, of Snoke as a story element is he's the guy corrupting, the Iago, the evil element corrupting Kylo Ren's soul. But once Kylo Ren chooses to fall to the dark side, he doesn't need more corrupting. He's done. He should be. The only question that should be then is who will redeem whom? Will Rey fall to him, or will she lift him up? But at that point, Snoke's purpose for the story is done.
And
So the idea,
we get a resolution to the second question that you just brought up too in this movie, which is he tries to bring her with him. She won't go, and so that's where we're at. They're on opposite sides of this thing, and it's heartbreaking because, again, for what I talked about earlier, like, he's an abuse victim essentially,
he is.
and he throws those shackles off, and then he follows the same path that Anakin did in Revenge of the Sith, which is, we can rule the galaxy together. We have the ability to do this and that, and this idea of power and controlling others he can't let go of.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, go ahead, Fredo. You're good.
No, I was going to say, and I think that was one of the things that was most exciting me about the potential for Episode 9 that we were going to get after, we're thinking about in 2017 is once you clear the deck, so to speak, and put Kylo Ren at the heart as the antagonist, where was he going to go? Because you knew in some ways that question of redemption was still hanging in the background, but he had walked away from it, so to speak. So what else could he do? Where else would this story go to put him in final confrontation?
At the end of this movie, he's the big bad.
He is.
Yeah.
Firmly established as the big bad. And so for Rise of Skywalker to make the choice that they do, it for me, it was massively disappointing.
It feels like they, in order, and I understand, we discussed why they did what they did, but
right.
The idea ultimately of, not being able to, being willing to stick with it, kind of disappoints, because you're like, where could that story have gone? I mean, I know that we read the story idea that Colin Trevorrow had for Duel of the Fates, and I don't know if that would have been better or worse. We can never know, but at least it's a different idea. It's a different story that we haven't seen.
So the Holdo maneuver coming up, and this is not retconning anything. I imagine if Carrie Fisher would still be alive to this day and lives for another 20 years or however long. I think her doing the Holdo maneuver would have been an awesome ending for that character. Somebody who has sacrificed her entire life for a cause to then actually sacrifice her life for the cause, I think would have been gut-wrenching. It would have been awful, but it would have been perfect for that character, I think.
It would have been interesting, and because ultimately you discuss her and say, okay, the love of her life is dead, killed by the son they made. Her son is now fallen to evil, but she's still holding out hope for him. So in terms of what she has to give or what she has left in her life, it's the resistance. So the idea of her sacrificing herself to have the one last good thing that she's made in her life, gave her life for it, it would have been powerful.
The Praetorian Guards are just good at posing, just by the way.
They talked about this. The staging of this whole sequence too is a story in itself. With the red curtain and how it ultimately gets lit on fire and how they had to slowly burn that curtain away. The filming of that was just insane. But it's ultimately very effective. I know some people have some issues with some of the choreography.
I
But
like the fight scene. I think this
I
is a
love
great
it.
fight scene.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things when people get nitpicky, you can see, but it's like, it's really, really fun.
I mean, it's the big duel scene for this movie,
Mm-hmm.
but it also makes sense for it to be so chaotic and so, in a way, almost animalistic, because you see, Ray growl and snarl at the Praetorian Guard. She's not really been trained, in terms of a lightsaber, and again, Kylo Ren hasn't really been doing much training under Snoke for how to wield the lightsaber any better. So it makes sense that it'd be very physical.
The turn of phrase here, where he's like he thinks he's so in tune with his apprentice. And it's like I can see him turning the lightsaber towards his enemy. And it's like holy smokes, holy Snokes.
Yeah. Oh, and there you go. And the moment when everybody went in the theater because they didn't see it coming, even though he's doing it. But it's the idea also, I think, of you don't expect, which is weird. We've been told that the Sith have always master and apprentice, and the master will die when the apprentice takes them down, becomes the master, unless, if the apprentice fails, and then the master will find a new apprentice. So this is standard operating procedures for the Sith. So I don't know why people are surprised that Kylo Ren would at some point go, "Yeah, I'm done with Snoke. I'm done with him telling me that I'm not good enough. The heck with him. I can take him." And doing it.
And this will be the last we see of DJ.
Yep. But it's a weird thing that he does with the affect for the stutter. I don't understand why he made that choice. But again, it's that element of a character who, I mean, DJ's very much out for himself. And it's weird that, we never get this as a resolution later on down the road in terms of Finn was somebody who has been very much out for himself in 2 movies now. Whether it was Force Awakens getting away from the First Order or trying to rescue Rey in this one. And it's not till episode 9 where we finally see Finn committed to the cause. So it's interesting they didn't get to, think of bringing him back to juxtapose him with DJ. By the way, on another level, how cool would it have been to have Praetorian Guard action figures back in the 80s? You can't tell me.
I was going to say, other than totally different thought, but other than the kiss, this has got to be like the number one moment for Reylo fans, right here.
Mm-hmm. Remember when the movie came out that everybody kept intercutting music, like remixing music to this scene? Immigrant song, Back in Black. It was either hip hop or hard rock or whatever. They were just cutting it in.
What sticks out to me here is that movie villains don't know how to fight. It's like it's 6-on-2, and it's like, all right, my turn. All right, my turn. It happens in Batman movies all the times. Like Batman's beating on one guy while 3 others watch. It's like, a bunch of people know just to like all pile up on Batman and just, I don't know.
By the way, did the Praetorian Guard have force powers? Do you know if any of the dictionaries or Wikipedia says anything about that?
I haven't heard anything about that. I don't think so.
Okay, because that would be the reason perhaps why the Kylo and Rey are able to come out on top. But because you're right, they have the Praetorian Guard have the numerical advantage. Yep, and here you go. Okay, the moment of truth for the two for Rey and Kylo. He's looking at the throne. She's looking at her friends getting killed.
Yep.
And it's a moment of, okay, are you going to fall or are you going to... What you gonna do?
And it makes sense that they don't resolve it here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't resolve everything. But he makes his choice and she makes her choice, and it seems pretty clear that they're at odds at this point of things.
Well, and it's okay, and and the whole idea of rhyming, it goes back to the same moment between Anakin and Padme and Mustafar
Yeah,
when he's telling her, I've brought peace and to the New Republic. I can overthrow the Emperor. We can rule the galaxy,
Yeah.
make things right. That temptation of, oh no, you want things to be done the right way. We can do that.
Of course, the other thing here is that this whole movie, Rey is just continually let down by people.
Mhm.
And here he throws this abuser's line at her.
Yeah,
It's like, you're nothing. You're no one.
you come from nothing. Your parents were.
Yeah. Except to me. It's like, I'm going to tear you down and then I'm going to build you back up. Like, the only way you can be built up is through me. And it's like, it's not okay. And she makes the right choice turning away from that.
It reminds me, there was an old animated show called The Boondocks that had a moment where a character talks about being in an abusive relationship, and it's very much the abusive ex-boyfriend's going like, you ain't bleep, you're without me, you're nothing. Without me, you're nothing. You don't have no value. Oh, and by the way, can I buy your car keys?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you have no value, but you have something of value. So it's a good moment in terms of explaining why they shouldn't be together. I'm surprised so many people skipped it or missed it. Oh, hold on, maneuver time.
And this is also it was the right choice that there's no sound when this happens.
It's one of the more beautiful shots in all of Star Wars, I'd say.
I also like this moment with Luke's lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's get rid of this other talisman, this other mystery box, this magical item. Let's just get rid of it. We're over and done with it. We don't need it anymore.
But we never explained how we got it back in the first place.
It's a good story for another day. But it's that day, not right now.
Not episode 8
or 9. But it's also the idea of they're both fighting to be the real heirs to Anakin and Luke's legacy. And Ben feels, and Kylo Ren feels that he's entitled to that because he's a blood relation to them. He's the grandson of Anakin. He's the nephew of Luke. Who's Rey to take that from him? She's nobody.
Well, that's themes of austerity we were talking about earlier with all the Canto Bight stuff. This is like, this is my heritage or my birthright or whatever. Yeah.
And it goes back to that idea that we're talking about, regarding, I lost my train of thought there for a moment as I'm looking at the explosions about to happen. But it's the idea of that, the only way that Rey fits into the story is if she's part of a ancient mystical bloodline, that she's connected in some way to the other characters. It's not the case, because every one of her choices, whether informed by her desire to learn who she is or to train and become better, are her choices ultimately. It's not her that she doesn't turn away from Kylo Ren because she's a Palpatine. She turns away from Kylo Ren because, no, I'm Rey and this is who I am and that's not what I do.
Yeah, Aaron, you're right. Silence was the absolute right choice for the hold-on maneuver.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, take us on another tangent because we just saw C-3PO a little bit ago. I will say this also: Rian Johnson knew how to write for C-3PO.
I love that moment early in the movie when it's like, wipe that look off your face.
Yeah, well, when he's just all his lines are just like it's Empire Strikes Back C-3PO. It's just great. I thought 3PO was a little overdone in The Rise of Skywalker. And I like this. BB-8 saves the day and old ATST.
John Williams starts making making his presence felt.
Here, yeah.
Right through here, like when Finn and Phasma are squaring off with these tribal drums, and then of course later with the Luke Kylo showdown.
Right.
This is really good stuff.
In some ways, it's the score that I wish we had been nominated for an Academy Award for more than, say, Rise of Skywalker. And I know that that's somewhat politics and whatnot, but I think this, those are, from here on out, you're right. The choices that he's making are tremendous in terms of the music. I am okay. So we're watching Finn fighting with Phasma, which I'm surprised. Again, maybe it's just Star Wars tradition to make such a big deal out of characters that end up, meaning so little in terms of screen time or whatnot. But I do wish this hadn't been the end for her.
Yeah,
It would have been interesting to see how she would have reacted to everything that comes afterwards.
And she'd been bested by him twice at this point.
Right. And the first one funny and this one physically, but I guess once you throw her down the pit of flames, that's pretty much it. But then again, we said the same thing about Maul.
And that moment where you see her eye through the helmet is very similar to what we get in that's season 2 and ending of Rebels.
With Vader.
Vader. Yeah.
It's like these are humans underneath these scary masks.
Yep.
I love this scene with Hux and Kylo. First of all, seeing Hux go for his gun, he was gonna pick it, but then it's like, what happened?
Well, from the very first moment that we meet Kylo and Hux, they're at odds with one another. They're almost like the two brothers fighting for daddy's attention and affection. And Kylo's got all the Force stuff and all the all the mystical power stuff, whereas Hux is very much the Empire, the fourth fate, the face of the new Empire, so to speak, that's trying to connect this. And at this point, it's like, okay, well, who's going to be in charge? You think who's the most powerful? Who's in?
Yeah.
And it takes no moment for Kylo to go, yeah, I got something you ain't got.
It takes 10 seconds for them to resolve that.
Yeah.
Although I do love, in some ways it becomes a punchline later on, but how much Kylo's throwing him around at the end of this. But then later on, at the end, when Hux is looking back at Kylo going like, what the heck do we do now with him in charge?
Oh, yeah.
You get the sense that, because there was also a sense that Snoke had a plan, that Snoke knew what was going on. Kylo's very much more a reactive Force presence. Yep, great.
Yeah, about time we get someplace different. Yeah.
Crate's wonderful.
I wish we'd have gotten more of it. Would have been interesting to see,
Sorry, we're seeing Poe aim as I hate the weapons in these movies.
In the sequels,
in the Force Awakens and the Last Jedi, I hate them. They just look like, I don't know, Battlestar Galactica weapons. They just look bad.
They look like they've been glued together, like they're part of hobby kits. They don't look. Yeah, that's one thing we've given to the Mandalorian. They at least start from a base of, this is a real weapon. Now we'll make it Star Warsy.
Yeah, they're just bad.
I like the amount of screen time that Carrie's daughter gets.
Nice. You gotta imagine that must have been really heartwarming for her, for both of them to work on the same set, the same movie, particularly after her daughter grew up with, well, your mom's Princess Leia.
Okay, so you talk about Star Killer Base. Well, now, this is Death Star tech. So
Yep.
again, I don't know, they can't let it go. It's like Rise of Skywalker. We get the Death Star cannons on Star Destroyers, and we had a Death Star tech on Crate, and we had this. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems. Well, again, it goes back to the issue of, what sacred is the Death Star. It's the ultimate big bad weapon, and we can't let go of that. Even though we've had other movies that have not had a Death Star like weapon and work fine, but
The Rise of Skywalker, at least they didn't build a giant planet that destroys everything. I know that the Death Star tech attached to Star Destroyers is problematic in a similar way, but at least they tried to do something a little different.
So we're coming up on Gareth Edwards, the director from Rogue One. Here's his cameo next to the guy who tastes the salt. And Ryan Johnson, of course, was in Rogue One. He was one of the Death Star gunners, one of the guys who had to duck when the blast was going. This whole speeder thing was kind of awkward. I know it was necessary, but it was, I don't know.
I mean, like I said, it would have been interesting if you had had a longer time in Crate or on Crate. You could have introduced them. You could have shown some of the elements that makes them unique, and presented the idea that they're not in the best shape, that kind of thing. So that when you do see them come out like here, you'd have understood that this is very much a desperate run that they're making. But because you don't get any introduction, you don't get to see the resistance try to put them together. You just kind of, okay, they're just whatever.
So let's talk about the color red. Red is very prominent in this entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
And with the Praetorian Guards, with Snoke's throne room, with the Crate ground going here.
The poster was red.
Well, where else?
Red.
But yeah, where else? Where else in the movie? But we see red all over the place. What are we? Why? What do you think we're trying to do here? I mean,
in some ways, I mean, in some ways, it's a stylistic choice. They're choosing to focus on it, but also I think it creates a color palette that's unique, particularly here, because we've had snow battles; those are all white, and we've had forest battles, green, and of course all the space battles are on the black background. So, this creates a juxtaposition between the salt layer and then the red salt underneath. What also does is it introduces a thought in your head. Oh, you know that underneath that white there's a red, which will come very important during the duel between Kylo and Luke.
I also think, like, stylistically, it's it's to denote danger and evil. I mean, these are things that you associate with the color. The Sith have always been strongly associated with red lightsabers, etc.
Screaming Porg. I like it.
I know, and I love this moment. Blow that piece of junk out of the sky.
Yeah, I sends his entire fleet after one ship because he's that angry and compromised.
Yeah, and then Finn going, "Oh, they hate that ship. It's no secret."
But I like the speeders being super junky. Like, circling back to that, I like it. The snow speeders in Empire were very weak as well, but they didn't do a good job of conveying that. They just made the walkers seem kind of invincible. But the reason those walkers were so invincible is because those speeders weren't equipped to take them down, really,
Right.
which is why they changed tactics. But with this, it's like it's meant to kind of riff on that, but make them even more so overmatched. And yeah.
By the way, we get a little bit of music borrowing here, Dave, for the sequence.
Yeah.
That takes the old school fans back to the end of Return of the Jedi and the dogfight in New Hope, right?
Right. The porgs getting in the way. Love the fact they just couldn't get rid of the porgs.
So they're working really hard to establish that this is a suicide run because he wants it when Rose does what she does, he wants it to not ring hollow, I guess. But it's still kind of an awkward. If there's any critique of the last third of this movie for me, it's this is kind of awkwardly done where Rose saves Finn.
Right. Well, and what was the point of them coming out to fight? I mean, they're getting picked off, but it's the idea that they're trying to take out that big miniaturized Death Star cannon.
Right. So they get 10 feet away from it. It's like, oh, this is a bad idea.
Right. It's like the whole point was to knock that out. Okay, let's knock it out.
Yeah. Let's see the job through. So you understand this point.
And especially when Finn's gotten close and Rose comes in and knocks him out, literally takes him out.
I get the moment from Poe's perspective.
Right.
You need to see Poe's growth. He needs to be able to lead. And this is really one of the better movies at tackling that question, like what makes a good leader. Like in the other movies, it's we must be, stand up to evil and be strong and fight no matter what. But this movie actually looks into that question, well, it's not just enough to fight. We need to also protect that which we care about at the same time. And so from that perspective, the message is 100% right. But again, we talk about the execution. It's like, why were we attacking this death ray in the first place if we couldn't take it down? And then we decided halfway through we couldn't take it down, but it looks like he might be able to. But no, he's in too crappy a ship. It's never going to happen. She saves him.
She saves him by knocking him out of the sky.
Yeah.
Right next to the walkers.
Yeah. They're behind enemy lines basically at this point. Like how they even get out of there, they should be captured immediately, but nope.
And again, it's the idea. I mean, I love the moment that Rose says, look, we're not going to win by being like they are. We're going to win by fighting for the things that we love, the things that we care about. Because it's, again, this concept of doing the right thing because it's the right thing, fighting for good because it's the good thing to do. You don't kill yourself to save others. You save others. But at the same time, it comes at this moment after you're like, wait a minute, you're trying to save him, but you ran your ship onto him. You'd have taken him out.
See, you have to value life along with the cause itself, or else you're not on the right side of things.
Very much so.
By
the way, we're talking about Raylo. Did nobody ever ship Finn and Rose after that kiss? You would have thought that would have been a bigger deal, particularly because of Finn's feelings for Rey that we presume exist.
There were a lot of shippers.
There were a lot of shippers, but not a lot of ships. A lot of shippers, not a lot of ships.
So as we come up on the grand entrance here, did you guys think that Luke was actually there?
Initially, yes. Although I did find it interesting that it didn't look like Old Man Luke from Octo.
Yeah, it looked like he got some Just for Men and cut his hair and
he has the caretakers to kind of give him a trim and.
But of course, he also has his old lightsaber too, so it was interesting. But
there are so many clues that he's not there, and it's very cleverly done. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm with you, Fredo. I didn't pick up on that until later on.
Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that even though there's a battle raging and all this stuff, that Rian Johnson finds a moment to, to put them together and just have them talk to one another. It's really good. I think it's important. I mean, these are characters that have not seen each other in decades. who have lost their, he has lost his way in some sense, so he's coming back, around.
Screen together, Carrie died right after this,
Mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do this if he hadn't made a point to do it when he did. And
did I hear right that Carrie Fisher wrote the dialogue for this scene?
I believe she did. Or put it this way, she's a
Or-
famous
Or she doctored it anyway.
yeah, she's a famous script and
Script
dialogue
doctor,
doctor. Right. She she knows how to write great dialogue. So would it surprise me? Not in the slightest.
I love Carrie Fisher, but she was a script doctor and she doctored the prequel scripts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Are you blaming her for sand? Are you blaming her for sand?
I want to get that on the record because a lot of people don't know that she actually did work on those scripts.
And I do love the little moment with him and 3PO with Luke.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
the wink.
It's
Well
just,
done.
It's just a little moment, just kind of call back to how this all started.
This is John Williams' best work,
Yes.
maybe ever.
Yeah, well, definitely for the sequels. I love, it just because it's just hitting the moment perfectly. Again, he's gonna walk out by himself with a laser sword and face out the entire First Order.
One of my favorite moments is coming up when he says, "Bring the ship down," and Hux disagrees. He chucks him up against the wall, and then the guy goes, "Right away, sir."
Hey, he's in charge. Yeah, because look, his clothes are nice and clean and pressed. He's got a lightsaber, short haircut, just for man. He looks like the image of Luke Skywalker, legendary Jedi Master. He doesn't look like old hermit Luke from Acto, so we should have seen this coming.
Yeah, this whole thing blasting away at Luke.
But it goes to, when we get to the later reveal of him not being there and people getting upset at it, I'm like, Luke is being smart about what he knows about Kylo Ren. He knows that Kylo Ren takes nothing in the universe more than him. So if he steps out, he's going to focus everything on him.
And I've said this in the podcast before. This Luke is actually practicing what the Jedi have preached always. He is actually using his powers for defense, not for attack. He's using the Force in that way. And I think that gets missed sometimes. Is
Right.
that whole lesson from Yoda? That lesson from Yoda was total hypocrisy, because what we see in the Clone Wars, was the Jedi attacking things all the time. As much as they try to say, "Oh, we're only protecting these people," they were attacking.
They were leading armies.
Yeah, and I love Luke flicking the rocks off his shoulder.
Yep, brushing the dirt off your shoulder. Cool, JC.
But
Yes,
but
yeah.
no, he's using his powers for knowledge and defense. Which is, again, what right away, sir.
You're right, and then this is the lesson that Luke understood better than anyone else, as evidenced by the end of Return of the Jedi.
Right, when he chucks the saber and says,
Yeah.
"I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill my father."
And like, this was him. It was a pacifist approach. We're going to win this through love and through other means.
And that's why this is so much better story for Luke Skywalker. This moment right here, where he was lost. He was lost, and now he found himself. He came back to his true hero nature. That's if he was this Luke Skywalker for the entire movie, we'd be sick of him by now. But we've gone on this journey of going, how can he be this way? And he's so disgruntled, and he's turned himself off from the Force, and this, that, and now he's found himself. It's a much more interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great shot. This is a great shot. That wide shot of he and Kylo facing off.
Mm-hmm.
This is the blue lightsaber. You're like, wait.
Yeah, right?
Where's the green?
That's when something was going weird.
Yeah. Like, wait a minute. But again, for me, it's perfect.
All right. So another thing that doesn't pay off is here Poe is saying, repeating that Holdo line, "We are the spark that's going to light the fire of the reason," and then come for Rise of Skywalker. Wah, 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 wah. No, they don't have anybody. Nothing. Nobody came. The call wasn't heard. We've only got about 6 people, and all these Star Destroyers. That was just another payoff that was not there. People.
Well, I guess the payoff for them was when Lando shows up with the whole people fleet, which again it would have been interesting if they had called back to this line in that movie. Try to bring it back to that idea, but they didn't.
I wish I hadn't seen Endgame, because that you see what that scene in Rise of Skywalker could have been and wasn't.
Mm-hmm. When everybody's just coming together, you go like, oh.
It's just a bunch of ships. In Endgame, it was like, oh, and there's that person. Oh, and there's that one, and oh, yay, and there's that one. Oh, this is cool. But in Rise of Skywalker, it's okay, good, bunch of ships. Right on. Hey, look, the ghost.
Hey, look, it's Lando with
Wedge.
Wedge as a gunner. Yay!
Yeah.
I didn't like the payoff of the foxes, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a point to them. They're not just there to look cool.
Or sell merch at Galaxy's Edge.
But what's interesting is I actually read an article that apparently dogs are much better than humans at finding shortcuts in, if they're in a strange area, they can figure out and map out, due to their sense of smell and stuff, they can map out a shortcut that humans cannot. So that's kind of paid off here as well. The foxes know how they can get through the rocks. By
the way, it's interesting. You got Rey on the opposite end of where Kylo and Luke are, and Kylo seems completely unaware of it. He's got this strong bond that he's built over the movie with her, and he's so focused on Luke, on destroying Luke, that he has no idea whatsoever that she's doing what she's doing.
By the way, there was another tell when Luke moved his foot, and none of the salt moved.
Right.
But no, Kylo hates Luke more than his emotions are focused more on Luke, and that's Luke's whole plan.
Mm-hmm. But it's also like I was saying earlier regarding what it would have looked like with in Episode 9, where Kylo Ren is the supreme leader and is the guy leading the charge against the Resistance, because he's very much a prisoner of his emotions. He's not in control of himself. How that would have looked at.
The callbacks here are so good. Mm-hmm. Like, everything you just said was wrong. Like, the callback to earlier in the movie is so good. And then
moving rocks.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Rocks. Yeah.
Facing down everybody with your laser sword. And then ultimately the Force connection, which was like a great thing for developing Kylo and Rey early in the movie, and it would have just stood on its own merits for that. Mm-hmm. But to be able to utilize it for Luke here as a means to an end, for him to be able to use it to save everybody, is just phenomenal storytelling. Mm-hmm.
And I thought Adam Driver's acting in this last scene was impeccable. It was great.
Again, because Kylo Ren is not Darth Vader, and that's sometimes the problem that people got forgotten. Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, was a man wrapped up in his hate and his rage, but he was in command of all his powers. Kylo is very much somebody who's trying to be in control of his powers, just isn't. So that's why he can fly off the handle. He can, be consumed by what's happening in front of him and not be aware of the bigger picture.
So, after this movie had been released and people were complaining about Luke's Force projection, mm-hmm. and somebody criticized Ryan Johnson on Twitter, saying, "Were you just making up force powers now?" And then Ryan Johnson tweeted back, showing the book that he got, the information from.
But again, we didn't see Force lightning till Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
We didn't see, a lot of the powers until the prequels. The whole idea is the Force is an energy field. You can use it to do anything you want that the story calls for. So the fact that Luke is projecting his presence in another planet light years away and having an impact on a battle he's nowhere near, well, that makes perfect sense. The fact that it ties into the ethical teachings of the Jedi makes perfect sense. The fact that he just pulled a fast one on the kid makes perfect sense.
And by the way, can I say also that Pablo Hidalgo ruined this for everybody? Because, here Luke is dying and he looks up and you see two suns.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought immediately was, he's well, first of all, we see one sun here, but then he looks back and then you'll see two suns right before he dies.
Right.
And so you're called back to Tatooine. And, he's seeing that in his mind's eye. But Pablo Hidalgo had to say, no, Octo has two suns. It's like, come on, man.
Honestly, the first time I saw it, I thought, he's beginning to pass away physically. So as his brain's synapses are firing, maybe his vision's getting blurry and he's seeing the one sun as two. That's what I thought. I didn't think, there's literally two suns over there. I thought he's dying. So he's calling back to who he was before all this started.
Yeah, so like I said, it's in his mind's eye. It's he's, like I said, he's dying, but no, it's just two suns. So never mind the poetry. Screw that.
See, and I hate it when we have to explain things like that, because it should be able to stand on its own merit.
Oh yeah, a scene like that, it should be just up to interpretation, I'd say. Mm-hmm. But I love the scene coming up too with Kylo trying to reestablish that connection. Now he's like, well, Luke's gone. Oh, okay. Oh wait, what about Rey? Let me see if I can reconnect with her.
And it's so very on the nose that she closes the door.
Absolutely.
As an aside, Aaron, what kind of stormtroopers are these? Those are not Snowies, are they?
Yeah, well, they're they're Snowies. They're the same ones that were on Starkiller Base.
Okay, yeah, because I looked at their costume, their outfits, but uniforms, but it didn't think it were snow troopers, given that it's not a snow planet.
Well, right. I mean, yeah, it's not, but they're Snowies. Yeah.
Okay.
And the knee pads of the biker scouts in the Mandalorian were upside down. So.
And there you go. The force projection fades away. And he's just left right there. He won, but did he really?
What I'm thinking here is like, damn, how big is the Millennium Falcon? I thought it sat 6 comfortably, and now we've got 100 people or something on it. I know it's a freighter, but and see at the end here, I thought they were setting up Rey Poe as a
ship,
as a romantic link. Yeah, as a ship. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what's interesting is, and I love their interactions in Rise of Skywalker. That's one thing we've said that we appreciated, the dynamic between the three of them. But particularly here when Rey's looking at Poe, at Finn with Rose, it's a interesting moment, because these are characters who have not come together till this point, so they're having to find themselves after everything they've been through.
And Leia's line coming here, we have everything that we need.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, we didn't talk about the Jedi texts are on. She stowed them on the Millennium Falcon. One of the best lines from Yoda was, "She has everything that she needs," or everything in that book she already possesses, or something like that. I can't remember.
Right.
And of course, now we got to have the epilogue with Broom Boy.
Right.
Which makes us all think that we're going to have a new generation of Jedi. And never mind. Nope.
But again, it's the idea of...
But a whole crap ton of Sith. but no Jedi.
Those we can manufacture in a hurry. But it's also a question of, the idea. I mean, these kids are doing the same thing that we did as kids. They have the action figures, they have the toys, they're playing at it, and just the idea of wanting to be that call to adventure that Star Wars has at its heart. They're feeling it too. And, I love this little moment at the end with Broom Boy. Just, okay, there's a broom in one moment, and the next moment it's like, nope, it's a lightsaber.
So we're at the end of the movie, and we really need to sit down and talk with somebody again who just absolutely hated, this movie, and just try to figure out precisely why. And I mean, it usually comes down to the way that Luke is treated. But I mean, my biggest problem is just, again, that whole slow speed chase. I think there's just pacing problems throughout. I don't mind, and they're trying to deal with too many stories, really. But otherwise, it's an enjoyable movie. I think it's well put together. It looks gorgeous. So,
like I said before, to me, it's my favorite of the sequel trilogy because it has such a compelling through line from beginning to end. It's one that I think I spend more time of the three that I think the most about because of how well put together it is from start to finish. Like there's moments in Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker that I think get as good in terms of fan service, but I think from beginning to end, this is the one that's best put together. This is the one that connects best on an emotional, intellectual level. Plus, that moment where Luke just walks out is just epic.
I think it also depends on what you're watching the Star Wars movie for, because what you're just saying, see, if it's me, if I have my choice, I'm going to watch Force Awakens.
As he drops the toy.
Yeah, I'm going to watch Force Awakens first because it's just more enjoyable to watch. It's more fun. It's much like, I would much rather have a McDonald's cheeseburger than, sometimes than going to a fancy restaurant, because it's just more fun, so I think for me, I'd rather watch, if I'm just going to sit down and enjoy Star Wars movies, at least in the sequel trilogy, it's going to go in the order 7, 8, 9, I think. But Dave, what's your, where does it land for you?
I think it's the best of the three. In terms of rewatchability, it's a harder movie to rewatch than the other two. The other two you can kind of just turn on and have them on in the background, and turn off your brain or whatever. And I don't even mean that as an insult. I'm doing some work or something. I'll put this on in the background. This movie sort of demands your attention. It's heavier. There are a lot of deeper issues that they're trying to touch on in here, and for me, it's the movie that works the best of the three, and it's by a substantial margin too. Like it's like kind of a no contest for me. Like this movie is really good. Force Awakens is fun. I appreciate what it did, getting kind of reinvigorating Star Wars for a whole new generation and everything. And there is even some merits to Rise of Skywalker that I appreciate, but this movie is just it's artistic, and it aims to do things that many of the other Star Wars movies haven't, and I appreciate that its aim is so much higher.
Yeah, no, I think everything Dave said is appropriate. Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. But and I bring it back to music, that there's sometimes where you want to listen to a Beethoven symphony, and there's sometimes when you want to listen to Green Day. I mean, And that's a little bit of hyperbole here. I mean, it's really opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think when we talk about checking your expectations at the door, maybe people have to ask themselves when they're going into the movie: are you wanting to go to have fun, or are you wanting to go to experience like maybe something a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more artistic, like you talked about? And I don't think we think about that when we go to movies. I want to go see the Star Wars movie. That's why, Empire at first was, it wasn't as, fun as the first one,
Yeah.
but it is aged really well. So it'll be interesting to see how people feel about The Last Jedi,
20 years from now.
after it breathes for a while,
Yeah, I can't wait for those articles that we're going to read on the internet 20 years from now that are like, The Last Jedi is the most underrated of the Star Wars movies.
Right.
Know?
Yeah.
I think public opinions will change over time. But, yeah, it's, plenty of people liked it at the time. And again, I don't want to revisit this in a way that makes it sound like, oh, well, this was just universally reviled. It made like a gazillion dollars. It was very well reviewed.
Yeah, I think it stands as the best reviewed Star Wars movie probably of all time right now so far.
Yeah, at one point it certainly was that. So it's a great film. I understand people's issues with it, but I like it.
But by the way, just right quick to translate from Dave to U.S. dollars, gazillion dollars was 1.321 billion.
There you go.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for watching the Last Jedi with us. Next week we'll be talking about a whole gob of rumors and news that has been coming out. So we'll just speculate till we're bleeding out of our ears. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on. So tune in for that one. But until then, you can find us on Podbean, on Google Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, and on Facebook and Twitter. Share, please, with your friends who are fellow Star Wars nerds. But until then, we will say, who dat?
Who dat?
Everybody have a great week.
McConkey.